Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a second chance. My name is Philip Jones, your host for this evening, kidney transplant recipient. And today I have a wonderful guest with me today, Miss Jan Flanders. Jan, go ahead and introduce yourself for a second, please.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Philip, and Tafiro. Um, um, I am a very proud donor wife. My husband, Paul Flanders, died very suddenly just over 5 years ago at the age of 48 when an artery burst in his heart. And he became a cornea and tissue recipient, restoring sight to two women and improving the lives of dozens of people with over 125 tissue donations. I'm also a three-time tissue recipient, and so I have a somewhat uh, different look at donation from both sides. And I am happy to spread awareness about the importance of not only organ, but tissue and eye donation as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Jan. We appreciate it. We just got word to I'll be on in a quick second. But we'll go ahead and get started. Let's start from the beginning, but not the complete beginning, not from birth beginning, but really just kind of the thought of becoming an adult, right? So what inspired you to major in drama at USC?
Uh, I I've always been interested in theater, especially musical theater, and my family was very musical. We lived in New Jersey, very close to New York, and so we went to Broadway shows all the time. I got the bug when I was just a little wee thing, and so drama was really the only option for me as a major.
Now, I can understand. I'm my major is theater in school right now, so um,
Oh,
I'll be making my decision on where I decide to transfer probably within the next month.
oh, that's
Um,
great.
so now the musical part, I love watching musicals and attending them, but and I can sing somewhat, but not enough to be out in front holding my own tune. It's not for me. So, um, but no, that's awesome. So my next question is for you: is where did you get the idea of so you going through school, musical drama and everything? Where did the idea of wanting to work at UNOS or OPO come from?
That didn't come until after Paul died. Uh, and like so many other donor families that I've met over the years and employees of different OPOs, organ procurement organizations, I just want to spread the word. I want to raise awareness. I want to get the word out there and get as many people to check the box as possible. I had done it. Both Paul and I registered to be organ donors when we got our licenses many years ago. But as far as wanting to make it a career for myself, that didn't happen until I started really learning as much as I've been fortunate to learn about the whole process of donation and transplantation.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Ms. Cook, appreciate you for joining us, brother. I understand you got a busy schedule going on, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. I apologize to both of you guys for being late, but I'm just glad I can jump on here right now because okay. Anyway,
We appreciate you taking the time to jump on, sir. Again, I know you
Yeah.
and your wife got a crazy schedule out there today. So,
yeah.
um, but do you have any questions that you want to ask her yourself?
I just want to listen and take it all in, and then I can chime in. But
Okay.
I go ahead. Just go ahead.
So in early 2000s, your hand pain started to begin. What kind of pains were you actually dealing with at that time?
I'm a professional calligrapher, and though, of course, I noticed it more in my right hand, it was also in my left. it was just holding a pen, holding on to a coffee cup, just anything where I had to use my thumb and exert any kind of pressure would cause tremendous pain, and it just kept growing. By the time I saw a hand surgeon about it, the my thumb joint, now it can't go down, like my thumb could just like go down like this. I mean, there was nothing holding it in place. Um, the tendon was just shot, and um, so now I can't move them any more than that, and that's how it's supposed to be. And it made all the difference. But it was definitely years and years of pain, years of cortisone shots before somebody said, "Yeah, you're young, but you need thumb joint replacements."
Mm. Now you mentioned your cortisone shots. How many exactly did you have in total?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I would say I saw the first doctor who gave them to me probably every 2 months for maybe a year or so, and he would just jam the jam the needle in my thumb joint, and, with cortisone, you guys might know this, sometimes it works and it can work forever. One shot
Yep.
and you're good. Other times it can work for a few months, maybe a year. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it just doesn't take at all. It's a crapshoot.
Cortisone, I would say, is like more of
And
a blessing and a curse because it can give you that false sense when you get it, like, oh, I am better, I can do anything and everything, but it's kind of the band-aid on it where you don't know the damage you're doing to whatever it may be, knee, thumb, joint, and
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. And you think, oh, great, it doesn't hurt anymore, so I
right,
can
right,
do this. And you're really hurting yourself more.
right, right, right. But like you said, though, I've seen people who one shot and that's all they needed, and they went for years and was totally fine. And then
Yeah.
people like my sister who would go get cortisone shots in her knee all the time and would never take. So
Oh.
it's the luck of the draw. You're correct on that.
Yeah, it really is. I hope she ended up getting some kind of surgery to help her
Knee replacement is what
eventually.
she got.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So my next question for you is, in 2009 you had a successful surgery that worked very well for you. What exactly was done in that procedure?
That was a CMC joint, thumb joint replacement. 3 years prior, I had had a different procedure done by a surgeon who didn't think I was old enough to need a full joint replacement.
Mm.
He was wrong. And and the pain got worse. It was a horrible situation, and it took me a little time to find another surgeon who looked at what he was dealing with and said, yeah, we've got to replace the joint. So what they do is they cut the tendon,
Mhm.
and this was my first tissue donation, was a tendon. um, and they sometimes they use donor tissue, sometimes they're able to use some of your own tendon from maybe another part of your body and put it in there. But this
Right.
was this was a donor, and although unfortunately my surgeon was an older gentleman whom I love dearly, but he didn't use the proper terminology when describing to me what was going to be done, and he referred to it as cadaver tendon. That puts a totally different idea in your head of what it is you're getting. And I mean, Paul and I made terrible jokes about what was going into my hand, and it was horrible. Um, and that's so I ended up missing out on the opportunity to thank the family of my donors because they said, donor bone, or no, cadaver tendon, and
Well, when you
um,
say cadaver, the challenge with that is you don't put a face with it. Instead of saying a tissue donor,
yes,
that's when you could put a face with it. And that's the difference of that. So the
yeah,
terminology, you're correct on that. The terminology, especially come where we come from, me being a two-time kidney transplant recipient,
mm,
is volatile because just like you said, when you just say a cadaver, like speaking of this, I had a friend and he was playing in the NFL and
mhm.
he got a tendon in his leg. And he was like, "Yeah, I got a cadaver tendon." I was like, "No, man." I said, "Now you got a tissue. You're a tissue donor. You got a you're a recipient now." And when I told him that, I made him understand it. Then he started, believing in what we do just because of the terminology. I was like, "Nah, man, now you got donated. You got donated tissue, and that's what that's called. So just like if you got donated retinas and things like that, so you do put a face with that. So I clearly understand where you're coming from with that.
Yes, and once you just the difference in those terms makes you realize that it's a gift. It's
It's a gift,
something that this
right?
person or his family uh, chose to do to
Right.
help other people and to give of himself that way. I honestly didn't realize that I was a recipient until about a year after Paul's death. And my aftercare specialist from New England Donor Services, the lovely Kristen Ross, said to me at an event, "Well, here, you need to wear this recipient button too, because you're a recipient." I was like, huh?
Ooh.
So, I mean, it just hadn't dawned on me all that time. Even after learning about all of Paul's tissues that which had been donated by that time.
Right.
It's
That's why I
weird.
tell Phil all the time, the education portion is so huge. And it's about how you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes, there's a lot of people walking around out here thinking it's a cadaver and saying that, and it is, but let's put a face with that person because that person donated. We just don't want to say that's a cadaver. That person had a name. So
Exactly.
just like you just said, I so agree with what you say with that. And what you're talking about people need to be educated on that.
Yes.
And just the terminology we use what we say politically correct all the time. So let's be politically correct on this too, because it comes off in different ways. And I so agree with you. And just like you said, once you knew you were a recipient, it puts a new spin on it. Like, okay, hey, somebody did give me this gift, and I'm so appreciative of it.
Yes.
So
Exactly. And another term that's a big one is people will say harvest instead of
yes,
recover.
yes,
Uh,
yes,
Medical professionals are in desperate need, in my opinion, of being educated across the board about how words matter. And when
words
you're
matter.
talking to a recipient, when you're talking to a donor family, don't say they're taking your daughter down for to harvest her organs. I mean,
Yeah, really, right.
that's
It's
just wrong.
barbaric when you think of it like that. It's barbaric. Let's just keep it real. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and
there, that is one of my big platforms as I embark on my ambassadorships with different OPOs and, start telling my story, continue telling my story and Paul's story, is to educate people and sort of, do some kind of community education for hospitals, for medical schools that this is how you should these are the words you should use. Don't use any other words
right, right,
because in my surgeon's case, he was at a teaching hospital, one of the best teaching hospitals, one of the best hospitals in the country, and he had all these fellows beneath him that were doing their rotations, and they were hearing him, this highly respected surgeon, use cadaver over and over again, and
right,
they just,
right.
of course they're gonna say what their teacher says.
Well, he said it. It must be right. So this is the way we look
Exactly.
at it.
Right.
But
Right.
but let me say something. When my second transplant was in '07 at John Hopkins University, and my doctor was Dr. Robert Montgomery. He's a well-known doctor. This guy is, he's when it comes to transplants, he ended up getting a heart transplant now at NYU.
Oh, wow.
So, right, right. When he transplanted me, he was perfectly fine. Then all of a sudden, he had some serious episodes where his heart didn't go good. He was out of the country and things like that. So now he got a transplant. But when he talks about transplant now, it's really, really endeared to his heart, because of what he had to experience. Now he experienced it from helping people and things. He helped thousands of people get kidneys and all types of organs and things like that. He was one of the ones that pioneered the kidney swap back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was in the sixth incompatible transplant ever done in the world at John Hopkins University.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, on my platform, there's a documentary that I was in from National Geographic that did it. Phil knows all about. I'm just blowing my horn a little bit. Anyway,
Well, you're entitled.
right. Anyway, long story short, he has a different perspective now when you have something. It's almost like you got skin in the game. You know what I mean? Once you
Mhm.
got some
Yeah,
skin in the game,
exactly.
now you know. So I totally agree with what you're saying, and especially coming from he would never say anything like harvest these organs or cadaver or
Okay.
things like that. He would, and I think honestly there should be something just like you said. I love the crusade you're on to educate the doctors because that's the head up, and then with that being said, we also need to educate the youth. So when they're, when they, because they might not have a organ or something like that or anything happen to them, but they're gonna know somebody eventually as you grow up. I know somebody
Yes.
was on dialysis. I knew somebody had a kidney, a heart, lung, liver, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
But if you start them early, they will be all into about donation, opposed to saying these other terms and things like that.
Right. Yeah, that really is important. And I know that back when I checked the box, when I thought of organ donation, I thought, okay, it's the vital organs. That's all that anybody really talked about. But
Right,
now tissue donation, cornea donation is is being is being taught about more, and there's literature. Like if someone sets up a donate life table at a DMV or something, there's literature that says, hey, do you know that your skin tissue can do this, your nerve tissue? And people are very surprised by that.
yep.
And but there are 2 million tissue transplants every year versus 40,000 vital organ transplants.
Wow.
Yeah,
That just goes to show that tissue needs to be talked about even a little bit more.
exactly, exactly. And it can be, it can be used for so many things. Skin
Right,
tissue, of course, helps burn victims. That's, the first thing you think about. I know that all of Paul's skin tissue went to help women who were having breast reconstruction after mastectomies.
right. Hmm.
Some of his nerves went to women who had had similar procedures who were then getting resensitization surgery. There are so many things, and bone tissue. I mean, I there are bone tissue can actually be cryopreserved for up to 10 years.
I didn't know that. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, I did a little research.
That's yeah,
But
that's just yeah,
after
for sure.
5 years, um, it can be replaced, or not replaced, but re-preserved for another 5 years.
Mm,
So normally tissue can be cryopreserved for anywhere from 3 to up to 10 years.
okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I still don't know. It's only been 5 years for Paul. And so
Right.
sometimes I'll get an email or a text from Kristen saying, hey, guess what? He just, helped a kid with ACL surgery or something like that. And it makes such a difference to know
Yes.
that he's still out there, that he's
Exactly.
living on in all these people whose lives have just been massively improved by his selflessness,
Yep.
by his generosity. And I honestly don't know why anybody wouldn't want to do that.
It's kind of crazy when you talk to people, because I'm a recipient. I am a donor myself. No matter what, they just can't use the kidneys, but you can use
Right?
everything else. I don't, take it. I'm out of here.
Right.
Um, the challenge we have, I believe, is people, they don't know that this our physical is totally different than our spiritual,
Hmm.
and they're connected to this as this is who I am.
Right.
So when you have that thought process of this is who I am, I can't give it away ever. You're so attached that you feel like I couldn't even do that even in my death, because I think I'm going somewhere. Believe me, once it's over, you're not going to use this meat suit ever again.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to, to tell your story and your stories and my stories and everything, and to help dispel the myths that so many people buy into. Like when you just said they can use anything, they just can't use my kidney. A lot of people think that if you're a recipient, that's it, you're done. They can't you can't donate anything.
Right.
Use is another term that should be stricken.
Yeah.
And I keep
Yes.
catching myself. Um, but uh, people will say, "Well, I had cancer." Well, if it was lung cancer, okay, yeah, they're not going to use your lungs,
Right.
but
Right.
you've still got skin, you've still got nerves, you've still got other organs that.
And believe me, before they put something in somebody, it is examined, it is DNA tested, it is tested for everything. And that's
Yeah,
a whole nother procedure that we can even have a whole conversation on that, because that's a whole different ball game. So they're not just putting anything and everything in people like, I'll just take it, just put it in
right. And that's another one of those big myths that people think. They think, oh, I don't want to be a donor because if I get sick, um, the hospital's just going to let me die because somebody else might need a heart.
yeah. I keep it real with you, in the black community, that one is like one of the hardest, and the challenge I got sometimes, not just with the black community or anybody from color, is let's be educated. Learn what's really going on, and appreciate education. And once we can start educating people on what's really going on, I think and I believe it just takes one at a time. But we can't have these bad apples where you go to certain places and people are spilling venom that
Right.
isn't true.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Hey, we're gonna go to a commercial real quick, then we'll come right back with you. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Hey
I
everyone, welcome
just
back to a second chance. We're with Jan Flanders, who's a tissue recipient as well as a donor wife. So we'll get back into some questions. So, your husband Paul fortunately died at 48 from a heart attack, but you were able to honor him in his achievements as being a awesome donor last year at the Donate Life float during the Rose Parade. How was that experience?
That was absolutely wonderful. Uh, I could not have been more surprised when Kristen told me that he had been chosen to be honored with a fluorograph, which is right up there behind me, on the float. Honestly, I didn't even know that Donate Life had had a float in the Rose Parade since 2004. I I was ignorant of that, but it was the most amazing experience. I got to go out to Pasadena and help decorate the float, which was awesome. To see Paul's fluorograph up on being a part of it, along with 34 other fluorograph honorees, was just remarkable. He was uh, he was sponsored by Axogen, which is a nerve tissue bank in Florida, and it was their first year sponsoring a fluorograph. So he sort of represented nerve tissue donation on the float, um, and they worked with New England Donor Services. It was Kristen who, when they got the email saying, "Hey, we want to honor somebody. Do you have anybody in mind for nerve tissue?" 3.5 years after his death, she said, "Well, it's got to be Paul." And that was truly uh, the most incredible experience I will ever have. And meeting other donor families and recipients and living donors, uh, and and just being part of this community that is so large, but you don't really think about it until you're all, put together in a hotel, and sharing experiences. I had conversations with many people, and I've had them since, about the terminology uh, situation, and how, one nurse said so and so is going to have her organs harvested, and so the family just picked up on that and kept using that terminology. That's how insidious it is, and how why you have to be so diligent, and from the top down, uh, because what family is going to hear a nurse or doctor talking and not assume, just like the fellows at at that we were talking about before, okay, the teacher said it, so it's got to be right. But it was a really wonderful experience. Once the parade is over, the OPOs have the fluorographs framed as they did for this one, and uh, I take it with me when when I go somewhere to speak, or to show people what it is. A fluorograph is a floral portrait, and so it's a photograph comprised of all organic materials. They used to do these all in full color, which is remarkable, but it did become too difficult to find every color somewhere in nature. So now there's sort of a sepia tone. Uh, and I actually went to LA last October and created two of the fluorographs for this year's parade. So I really saw how it was done, and it's just a fascinating process. And that was pretty amazing, getting to see those on the float. And I've, honestly, Paul would be more proud of the fact that some things that I created were seen by millions of people than by the fact that he was honored himself.
Mm.
He was my biggest champion, and my biggest fan, and that's just the kind of guy he was.
Sounds like a selfless humanitarian type of fella.
He was. He definitely was. He cared very much about other people.
It's beautiful. I mean, that's amazing. Even when you're going, you're still giving. You know what I'm saying? When you got somebody like that can do something like that,
Yeah.
and you living, you keeping his legacy going like that. That's pretty awesome. I'm really
Yeah.
thankful to meet somebody like yourself who's doing something like this. It's really
Thank,
really courageous too.
thank you. It definitely helps to talk about it.
Hmm.
And if if I can just get, if I don't know, 5 people watching this show today will think, okay, yeah, you know what? I do want to become an organ donor. Then that's awesome. That's 5 people that weren't signed up yesterday. And you can register very easily at registerme.org. Uh, um, Real simple, and you can do a world of good. I did realize I made a mistake earlier when I was talking about how long tissue donations can last. It's actually veins that can be
Oh,
repackaged after 5 years and last another five.
okay.
So I was looking at the wrong line on my on my cheat sheet.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Because like you said though, and there might need to be some literature in the hospitals or a small campaign or some type of campaign
Mhm.
going out to the health professionals with terminology when it comes to this, because a lot of times we never know. Somebody might have had an accident, and they might have got introduced about being an organ donor in a negative way, like, hey, would you like to have this person's would you like to have your loved ones organs harvested instead of donated? And
Right.
there's a way to talk to people.
Mhm.
You got to use your emotional intelligence and things like that, and how to come over and convey people about the things, and educate somebody about it. But it's your introduction to things that can turn you off and on how these things work sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Or if you're one of those people who has heard and bought into any of those myths like we were
Yeah,
talking about,
yeah.
that's difficult. Now, in the case of a minor who has not been old enough to check the box to register, then it
Hmm.
falls to the parents.
It's true.
And that's why it's so important to start talking to kids early, to go to to schools where there's driver's ed classes being taught, and explain to them, so at least they can have that conversation with their parents. So
Right.
in the awful case that someone dies before he or she is 18, they've had that talk with their parents, and the parents don't have to wrestle with the decision if they aren't sure what their child wanted. So I've met a number of people who fortunately had that conversation, usually when the kid was getting a driver's permit,
Right.
and and said, hey, I really want to be an organ donor or something like that. And then it's a no-brainer for the parents to make that decision.
Right. Well, I think like you said, just educating them on and on, and even introducing them before then. You
Oh
know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like one thing we did, when we was at the Why Not Foundation, we would have like tournament for causes and tourney for causes. Our friend Edward Drake, who runs the Why Not Foundation, we would put these on, and we would have like 25,000 kids out there at the Ohio State Stadium, and I'm talking about like a 2 or 3 day event, equivalent of 25,000. And we would always be on the microphone talking about organ donation. We had booths set up and all this stuff. So just to educate people, and you have the news out there all the time, those things like that. And it takes those type of efforts
Mhm.
and it takes the one-on-one efforts like you do, also just talking to people individualize,
Right.
planting that seed, because it's a need out here. And I
It
think if we
is.
all just keep on doing our jobs like this, everything will be, it will get better, let's just say that.
That's true. Looks like
So
somebody asked a question over there. Um,
let's see what it says.
you guys want to take that?
Yeah, I'm bringing it up now.
Okay.
Is
I
there a
can't even.
different is there a different procedure with registering as an organ donor between someone who is alive and wants to donate a kidney or a lung versus someone who only wants to donate if they pass away?
I
So
can answer that if you want me. Oh,
uh,
go ahead, Phil. Go ahead,
go
answer
ahead,
it.
sir. No, it's all you.
No, go ahead. You good? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, really, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Like the difference between the two, right? So you do have an option of saying I want to donate as a living donor, or I want to donate only when I pass away, right? So the pink dot on the back of your driver license indicates that when you pass away, that whichever medical facilities you go to when you pass has the rights to procure you and take your organs and pass them on to someone else. Then there's the difference between that and a living donor is that you have the ability to walk into a hospital, call whichever line that they ask you to call, and say, "Hey, I want to see if I can be a match with someone to uh, donate either part of my liver or one of my kidneys to them." What's the process? I don't know the complete process. Maybe Mister Cook knows that process, um, but I don't know what the complete process is after that step. So, Mister Cook, if you do know, please take it away.
Well, it's called an altruistic donor. That's what it's called. It's called a person who wants to be just an altruistic donor. And so the process is, sometimes somebody want to be in a kidney swap. Sometimes somebody might want to be an individual, like you said, give it, part of their heart. I mean, their liver, a lobe of it, something like that. It depends on what you have, what you want to do. But the process, like you said, is they take your blood, they take your DNA, and they see what's going on, and then they try to match you up with somebody who's waiting previously for that position, whether they're a heart, kidney, or I'm sorry, not heart, but a lobe of a liver or a kidney or whatever it may be. They try to match you up with that person. And that's the procedure. And just like you said it perfectly, Phil. That's how that works. Whoever that was who was calling asked that question. So
Yeah. There are, of course, a lot of family members end up getting tested if, if one of their loved ones or a friend or, someone has a need for a liver or a kidney. I don't believe lungs are ever uh, able to be donated.
yeah,
That,
if
that
I
was
said,
part of the question, so I wanted to
oh,
clear
I'm
that
sorry.
up.
Yeah.
Um, but kidneys and livers, or part of livers, the lobes are definitely able to be donated. But there's a lot of testing that goes on. Like you were saying earlier, they're not just going to let you walk into a hospital and say, "Hey, I want to give one of my kidneys to my niece," and, and they're going to say, "Cool, let's go to the OR." That just isn't going to happen.
Right.
There's so much testing. I've spoken with recipients who have had to wait and wait and wait for long periods of time. Maybe
Yes.
you guys have. I'm not sure, but
No, you're right.
the teams, the doctors that are working for them will they'll say, "Nope, nope, that's not going to be good enough. It doesn't meet all the criteria. We're going to wait for another one." Which has to be the most frustrating thing in the world. But then you end up getting, an organ that is absolutely right for you,
Right.
and that, I guess makes it worthwhile. Now, are you both two-time recipients, or
I'm a two-time. Phil's a one-time.
Phil's one time? Okay, and you're waiting now for a second. right?
Yes.
No? Okay. Okay. So I would imagine that the situation has come up for you where there might be somebody, but the the test results didn't work in your favor, or it wasn't a match, or
Well, the thing about my family is we're close, but we're not close.
okay.
Um, and I say that because we can get together on any holiday, any occasion, Super Bowl, anything else like that. But uh, I'm a little bit more talkative than like my dad's side, really, than anybody else. For the most part. But most of the people in my family have some kind of health issues. That kind of prevents them from being able to, donate. Um, and the first person that came up was my mom, because she was the first person in line. When everything started for me, and then she started kind of going through some things, and then found out that she couldn't do it. I think the only person really at this point that's available to do it is my dad. But the thing about my dad is that he has to lose weight before that happens.
Mhm.
Right? I think they said he has to lose like 30 or 40 pounds before he can get in that position to be able to donate his kidney to me. So, um, and at the same time, I don't think uh, that some of the people in my family really know about my health condition and what I go through.
Mm.
Um, I think I believe it was you that was on when my cousin came on when I told my story, and she even told she was like, I didn't even know half the stuff my cousin was going through, and that's my cousin,
Mm.
and it's not so much that I was secretive. I honestly just think it was at the time when I was younger, my parents were secret and only told certain people, right?
Sure.
Um, because at that point it's kind of out of my hands. Phones didn't really start popping up till like middle school, high school, and I didn't really get my own till like right before I went into high school. So, I was only focused on talking to friends and
Sure.
stuff like that, and was like, I'll see family over the weekend anyways, to go watch the game or something like that. So it wasn't really on my mind. I think at the same
Right.
time it wasn't on my mind because I was still in a good position, somewhat health wise, in high school. I wouldn't have having to worry about going on dialysis right now.
Hmm.
My kidney function was still as low as 30% was still functioning very well.
Mhm.
Urination was coming out great. No, not really that much protein or anything like that. And
Mhm.
so I wasn't really my eyes weren't focused really on a transplant at that time because I was more focused on getting through things of that nature.
Sure.
Um, so
Being a
it
kid.
wasn't really. I'm sorry.
Being a kid.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's basically what it was. So my mind wasn't on a transplant life to a degree. It was partially because, like I've stated before, I had an appointment every month as a pediatric patient, and every month my doctor would tell me, "For you need to have a transplant. You need to go on dialysis." And it took for me to get to dialysis to my transplant to understand why he kept telling me that. It was to get me to understand and be ready for it. Because if he wouldn't have, I definitely wouldn't have been ready for it. I probably have been balled up in the hospital room, crying like a baby or something. I said, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So, I definitely thank, both my pediatric nephrologists for taking the care that they had, you know, and caring about me the way they did. So, but to move on, with what we were talking about, you stated in an interview, that checking off that organ donor box, when you get your driver's license was common sense. Who
Mhm.
wouldn't do that? And I pose this question to Mr. Cook as well. Why do you think you say that question? We know that there's people all the time who don't check that box. What do you think outside of the myths and things of that nature? Like, what do you think the reason is why people don't check that box, even though they understand what can come from.
Oh, was that for me or for
Also,
Mr.
both
Cook?
of you. But I'll let you go ahead and answer
I'm
first.
gonna let her answer first. So go ahead.
Yeah.
I knew it was for both of
I
us.
was just going to say you can probably answer better than I can. I I don't know. I really don't. And the only thing that keeps coming to my mind is those myths. And that would be the only reason I could think of that somebody might not just right off the bat check the box. Uh I or a cultural belief or something like that. I don't know if people think, oh, geez, I'm just getting my license. I'm 16, I'm 17. I don't have to make this decision now. What's going to happen to me? I don't know. What would you say about that, Tafiro?
I think it goes back down to for one educating for one, but Phil, you make that's a good question you pose, Phil, and I think it goes back to education, but I also think I think we have a problem with separation of who we are. And it goes deeper than that, where again, this is the physical, then we have a spiritual. Just like when you can close your mind, you can close your mouth and talk to yourself. That's who your real self is. And that's where you're having, you're once that lines up with the physical, then you're in the right position. But again, sometimes it's not lining up. So people, their ego won't allow them to want to give something that they feel so important to them, but
Right.
they don't know the truth of it is when you're gone, you're not going to use none of this. It's a wrap.
Right.
But that's not told though. So we feel like, hey, we're going to see God, and that's true. You are going to see God, but you're not going to see God in this physical space, that you're
Hey,
taking up
your
right now.
your
But
lungs aren't going to do you any good once they stop
right,
working.
right. You ain't gonna use no lungs where you go see God. You don't need all that stuff. You don't need this meat suit. And again, we have a challenge with, and this is as a whole. This is as a people thing. We have
Mhm.
a challenge with separating the two, separating your spirit, separating from your physical.
Mhm.
And Phil, that's my true belief of why we have that. After we know the myths, like you said, after the myths are gone, after all, and people are educated and everything, still people don't check that box, and that's why I believe it's so. That's just my personal opinion.
I can agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Um,
And but what happens though is when that person or whoever that person is, that person who does not check that box could go home and somebody could tell them, hey, so and so needs a kidney transplant. I didn't check that box. And that person might say, I ain't giving no kidney. And that person might say, well, you know what? This so and so gave a kidney. They're perfect. My sister gave me my first one. A close family member gave me my second one. And
Oh.
like I said, they're perfect. And then once they see a face on that, like what we need to do is maybe have some campaigns where we're showing recipients also, like, look, I'm healthy, I'm
Mhm.
perfect. I gave my kidney to my brother, I gave my kidney to my sister, whatever it means, my husband,
Yes.
my this and that campaign right there will spill a lot of these myths also, where people think, because sometimes I've seen people see my donor and they're looking at her like, oh my goodness, you gave a kidney, you get like there's something special. And I told her, I said, the only challenge with looking at, we don't want people looking at it like they're special. We want people to look at it like it's regular.
Mm,
That I'm just a
yes.
regular person. Yes, I gave a kidney or I received a kidney or whatever, but you're not. This can be done. You can do it too. You can do it too. That's what I'm trying to make the situation like. Hey, you're not. That person's not special. They are special. They gave it, but you can be
Right.
special just in that same form.
Right. And of course they're your heroes and
Right.
as it should be. But yes, it would make such a difference if this kind of thing were just normal, you know?
Even if we was like to do some type of campaign where you could be a hero too, something like that, where we show recipients and you can be a hero also, and promote that as well, promote it big to a point where it starts getting in people's subconscious. They're like, "Hey, I could be a hero too. I can help people too." And make that a big thing, opposed to harvesting your organs.
Right. Well, on this year's Donate Life float, which actually won the top award of the whole parade, there were two people, a recipient, and I believe it was kidney, uh, but also her donor was there walking along the float as a living donor. She was riding on the float. But when I read about this, she had, people had been tested, nothing was coming up, nothing was going to work, and her neighbor heard about her situation, and without saying anything to her, he decided to go through the testing process. And then one day he went over to her house and said, "Sit down, I have something to tell you." She could not believe that this man had just made this decision, because he didn't want to tell her ahead of time, because if it didn't work, then, that would just stink. But it was such a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. For a neighbor. And she wasn't broadcasting it. She wasn't, putting up flyers or anything like that. But he heard about it, and he decided that he could spare one. And and so they were part of the float together, which was I believe it was the one of, I think, the first time that happened. And that's just a wonderful story, and that's the kind of story that needs to be shared.
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah. I did want to, because I thought it might help to talk about some of the different ways that tissue donations can help people, things that you
Have
may
at it.
think about. Um, as I've, with my experience, the tendons helped me be able to not drop coffee cups, and to be able to hold a pen. The bone tissue I received when I had this joint fused, because the pain was terrible and couldn't I couldn't write. Uh, those are tiny little vials of bone paste. Uh, and so when you think about getting a bone tissue donation, you're thinking about probably something different. I was, but it's bone paste, and it helps to put things back together. Um, Bone tissue is also used for spinal fusion procedures. They stabilize the vertebrae as the metal hardware is applied. This is fairly new as of 2019. Um, you can use knee ligament repairs and reconstruction, cervical fusion, lumbar fusion. This is still bone that we're talking about. Foot reconstruction, ACL reconstruction, skin tissue. We've talked about, and that promotes healing and improves the mobility on people. In the cases of women having breast reconstruction, it improves the mobility of their arms and shoulders. Um, Nerve tissue is used as a bridge to fill a gap between the two ends of the damaged nerve, and it provides a pathway for axons to regrow across the gap. One thing I learned when I was in Pasadena was that the largest nerve transplant, the largest graft that is done, is 7 centimeters. So that's the biggest one. So when you think about Paul, who was, average size guy, giving over 125 skin, tendon, bone, and gosh, what else? Nerve donations. They're all very small amounts. So just one person, one 5'10" guy, could help all of those people, and it's truly amazing. Um, so I just want to share that and let people know there are so many options, so many ways that you can help just by saying, yes, I want to be an organ, I want to be an organ donor. So then in Paul's case, he died at home. So he was not going to be eligible for donating vital organs, because to do that, you have to be in an ICU, you have to be hooked up, you have to be on life support. Uh, and that's the only way that the vital organs can be donated. So when they told me hours after his death, when I got the call from New England Donor Services, they said there's tissue. He can donate his corneas, he can donate his tissue. And I said, take it all. Recover anything that you possibly can. They even recovered his heart valves, even though his heart was what killed him, because the heart valves could have been used in infants to help them. Now, unfortunately, and Tafira touched on this a little while ago when we talked about how incredibly well tested everything is before it is transplanted into another human being. There was a tiny bit of bacteria in one of the samples of Paul's heart valves. That meant they had to scrap all of the samples that they had taken. That's how meticulous they are. That's how careful they are. So this is how we know this. Would I have loved for his heart valves to have been able to help somebody? Of course I would. But I know that the doctors are doing the testing that they need to, and they're not going to, run the risk of rejection on or infection or anything.
So let two things. One, can you send me that? And two, um, you said that in order for someone to be able to donate vital organs, they have to be hooked up to a ventilator or life support of some sort. Is that the same instance as if they're on life support at home?
That is a very good question. I believe they need to be in an ICU situation, that it needs to be a hospital situation. Don't don't quote me on that, but I believe that is what Kristen told me when I was asking, about, hey, why couldn't Paul's, you know, liver and, kidneys be donated? So I believe that they do have to be in a hospital in an ICU, and
Okay.
then and then become brain dead, and then that's where the life support comes in.
Miss Cookie, you got anything else?
I just wanted to say that, it's imperative that even they use, they only use the organs in the only way you have to die in a certain way. That's
Mm,
what you're basically saying. You have to, expire in a
right.
certain way. That's the only way they use them. So
Someone who dies in a car crash on impact, or on the scene, is not going to be able
correct.
to donate vital organs.
It's true.
They can still donate tissue and
Right.
corneas. Uh, Someone like Paul, who died in our house, was not going to be able to.
Right.
Um, but someone who, say, has a heart attack, is taken to the hospital, still alive, but then becomes brain dead, then that's where the decision can be made to recover the vital organs, as well as the tissues and
Right.
corneas and anything that can be recovered.
Well, I think the reason why you can't use those organs is because I don't want to say it like this, but they kind of spoil.
Yes, they do. Once the body
Rigor
dies.
mortis sets in quick, and the organs can't be revived. That's why.
Right. Well, now you see on, on all the TV shows and everything, the coolers with the hearts in
Exactly.
them getting choppered from, Seattle Grace to
Hmm.
wherever.
Memorial wherever, right? Memorial
Right.
State.
Um, the organs uh, can be viable for up to 24 hours. However,
Right.
after 24 hours, they start to uh, de- decompose, sort of.
Yeah.
And that is also the same for tissue.
Yep.
I learned that. Um, my concern about Paul was that it had been hours since his death, and by the time I got done with my interview, say like 9 hours had passed, and the woman on the phone assured me that there was plenty of time. But if it's been more than 24 hours, they can't recover safely.
Was
Well,
that
Phil,
it?
I don't have any more questions, man. This has been a wonderful interview, man.
Oh, I've learned so much from both of
I have
you.
also. I've learned a lot from you also, especially about the Cairo as far as how long they can keep the veins and things like that. I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's really amazing that they can do all that.
Yeah.
I know the same person who asked the question before asked another question.
What other
Um,
question did he ask? Because I didn't see it. I can't see it. I'm on the phone.
uh, do you have the numbers when it comes to organ donors
Oh,
per year versus organ need?
Mm.
And would you support some type of monetizing of the procedure as an incentive to get those donor numbers up? Oh, okay. So
Good question.
offering people money to become organ donors.
They
Sound
frown on that big time, but
Yeah, we
hey,
do. Yep. Donation should be something from your heart. No pun intended. Uh,
yeah,
um, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know that the number of donors versus the number of organs needed, there's a huge discrepancy. That's why that's why we need to get as many people to register as possible. There is never going to be a shortage of people who need organs or tissue or corneas.
well, I am pleased because I know these numbers aren't 100% correct. So Jen, please correct me on these numbers here. But it says and at this time, this is at the time of this interview that you did for um Telegram, and it says that um
Head north on Landis Avenue toward
Paul was
Dayton.
able to donate 13 donate and bone tissues and 2 corneas. His
Mhm.
organ donations have been used for spinal fusions, knee and shoulder surgeries, breast
Mhm.
reconstructions, among other uses. What are those numbers currently at?
Paul's numbers?
Yeah.
Oh, uh, mm, I have not gotten an updated list recently, probably since back then. I did learn, though, since then that his nerve tissue donations, which we had thought to be 9 at the time of the parade, I learned from my contact at Axogen that there had been actually more, probably upward of 15. Uh, I did find out that some of his nerves or part of his nerve tissue was able to restore feeling to a person with facial paralysis. And that's just been in the last year, I believe. And that's kind of neat. Um, I also found out from Kristen that he was able to donate tendon to somebody who also needed hand surgery, which is kind of a whole big full circle thing. That makes me very happy. But I do not have an exact up to date number uh, right now. I will ask for one. I've also written to every single one of Paul's recipients, or at least all of his recipients as of 3 years ago. I've not heard back from any of them. I I want to also let everybody know that donor families want nothing more than to learn about the people in whom their loved ones are living on. I know
I wonder why they wouldn't. I wonder why they wouldn't respond back. Daggone.
I
I have
don't know.
a small assumption
Mhm.
to that, and Mr. Cumming, you can contest to this. We very quickly as recipients understand the fact that in certain people's facts that somebody had to die in order for us to receive these organs, right?
Yes.
And some people just aren't there emotionally full circle to understand that, yeah, I
Mhm.
received it, but these people had to give up something for me to get that. And
Right.
some people can't necessarily sit through that conversation
Mhm.
of having to, you know, hear them crying and hear them going through, and it's not a selfish situation. It's
Mhm.
just the fact that again, us as so like my donor was a deceased donor.
Okay.
And I sent a letter to my donor family as well. Never heard back. It's been 15
Okay.
years, and I haven't heard anything back from them yet. And I don't take that to heart. I just
No.
understand the fact that they weren't ready to give that. Probably nobody's ever ready to just give
Oh,
someone up, especially when they
absolutely.
hold that much of an impact on their life. You know,
Right.
so and so again, I just think that some people aren't ready to have that conversation yet, as well as from the opposite side, as
Yes.
well.
Yep.
So
And I see my good friend Natalia just chimed in and said it's about trauma. Both donors and recipients endure real trauma, and that is absolutely true. And readiness is a good word for it. Thank you, Natalia. Yeah, it's
But but
even just
but in your circumstances, you gave like your husband gave tissue. That's what, and these people are still living, and so I can't understand why they wouldn't respond.
right. Well, I guess Phil's point there was that they know Paul's dead. And that you know uh, they would this guy wouldn't be playing baseball again if Paul hadn't died and donated his bone tissue. But that's why I just I included a picture of Paul with each of the notes, and I tried to personalize them if I had details about the person's actual surgery, because in some cases you don't know that, because it all comes down to there are these cards, donor cards, that are supposed to be filled out by the surgeons when they do a transplant, and they're sent back to the OPO. And if they're really good about filling in the details, then you can learn that this kid was 16 and he played first base and he tore his ACL and now he can play again. But sometimes you just know that, you know, okay, so 7 of his bone tissue donations were donated, um, were transplanted into people. So yeah, I keep being told by aftercare specialists that we should keep writing. Phil, there's no reason you shouldn't try to write again, because they see miracles. They see, maybe 15 years they haven't felt like getting in touch with you, but hey, maybe the 16th year they'll say, you know what, yeah, I'm ready to talk to Phil. So I'm going to write again, and just but and even if you just say, even if you just send a note or something that says thank you, that would just mean the world to us. It's not that we want gratitude because, because my husband dropped dead and, and was able to donate so many uh, tissues. But for my part, I would like to hear from the people. I'd like to see a picture of that kid playing first base. I'd like to just make that connection. But really, just hearing anything would be great. Some people hear back really, really quickly from their recipients. I I know one woman whose daughter died about a year ago, and she has already heard from four of her five vital organ recipients. That's kind of unheard of because it does take time, like to be able to talk about that because there is some guilt involved, I think, for recipients. So I just think the more awareness we can spread, the more the more talking people can do about it, the more normalizing of being a donor that we can do. That's going to be the best thing for everyone.
Right, right. Well, Jim, we definitely appreciate you joining us this evening. Definitely want to thank your late husband Paul for doing everything that he's done and saving individuals' lives even after his death. That's a major thing, especially for us within the transplant space. We love to hear stories like that because it reassures us that what we're doing is for a reason. Um, so again, on behalf of myself, Mr. Cook, you got anything you left you need to say?
No, thank you. Wonderful story. Hats off to your husband, man. He did a great thing, and I appreciate people like that, like you said,
Thank you.
in our community. So, thank you again for letting us interview you. Thank you again for letting us hear your story, and keep on doing. Keep on going hard with your crusade. We appreciate that.
I will, and soon I hope to have some more exciting information about part of that crusade to share with you guys.
Right. And if you
Thank
ever
you
want to
both.
brainstorm about some good ideas, hit us up, and we can
Okay,
do some
I'd love
brainstorming.
it. I'd love it. Thank
Sounds
you
good.
both so much for having me on. It's really been an honor.
It was our
You're
pleasure.
welcome.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yep.
So next week, we'll have Brenda Darlings on. That's another connection to EMAT on as well. Definitely looking forward to hearing that story. And then the week after that, we'll have supposed to have Shannon Morroy on, uh, who's also a living donor. So, and that story is incredible. You're not gonna want to miss. So, thank you all for watching. Everybody who tuned in live, anybody watching in the future, we greatly appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.